You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and we are live from the White House. Today, the Supreme Court handed the Trump administration one of the most sweeping immigration victories yet. And joining me now are two people who have been in this fight on the front lines every single day. Todd Belcore, he is a civil rights attorney and the executive director of Social Change Chicago, an organization dedicated to transforming communities through legal advocacy and civic power. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate the opportunity, although these are very unfortunate circumstances for sure.
Very much so. And Nii-Gymfi is the executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, otherwise known as BAJI. It's the only national organization led by Black immigrants and African Americans, specifically centering experiences of Black people in the immigration rights movement. Nana, thank you so much for being here on this consequential day.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for talking about this topic. It's really important.
Absolutely. And talking about this topic right here on the grounds of the People's House. We want to make a point today that we are doing the show live from the White House as a member of the press corps, because this is the People's House and this is an issue that will impact people for generations if we don't wake up. Nana, I want to start with you. Your organization, BAJI, has been sounding the alarms on this particular targeting of Haitian immigrants for years. Today, the Supreme Court ruled, and it has sent a chill through our communities. What is BAJI's immediate response to the hundreds of thousands of Haitian TPS holders who are really scared right now?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's really important because often people focus on just the policymakers or the advocates, but there are community members, over 350,000 Haitians who are impacted by this decision. And as you know, they have been, stressed for longer than a year, but certainly in this past year about what their fate would be. We need people to not panic. They're expecting people to panic, and we need, they're hoping that people are going to say, hey, I leave, I'm going to self-deport, I'm selling my house, I'm quitting my job, I'm out of here, that people are going to harm themselves. They know that this does create the kind of mental stress on people that can make that happen. People can literally lose their minds. Folks that have been living here all of this time, that have all of this responsibility, both in terms of family and community here and family and community back in Haiti, and now feeling like that is all being snatched away. Instead of panicking, folks should be going to attorneys, going and consulting, finding out what their options are, going to trusted organizations such as BAJI and others in their communities, trying to make sure they get good resources, good information, because Dr. Court, that WhatsApp is going to be deadly right now. It's going to give people all kinds of terrible information. And to watch out for fraudsters, because that's also going to happen. People who are going to be saying, hey, put your house in my name so we can save it. People who are going to be saying, I can fill out paperwork for you that's going to hook you up. All of that, people should be on alert. People should have fearless discipline. And people should do their best to lean into trusted and reputable organizations and advocates for good information as well as good counsel.
And that's exactly why we're here, to make sure that we can provide people with information they can trust from leaders on the front lines. Just as a follow-up, Nana, you've said on many occasions that the termination of Haitian TPS is rooted in anti-Blackness, not just politics. Can you walk our leaders, learners, and listeners through that connection? And I think this is especially important because, as I shared at the top of this show, the court today said the president's statements were not, quotes, overtly racial. Justice Kagan said otherwise. What do the facts tell us?
The facts tell us that it's obviously racial. I mean, what the court is doing here is what the court has been doing when it comes to Blackness. And as we say all the time at BAJI, they don't make these distinctions between Black people that we would like to think that they make. It is not about nationality as much as it is about race. When you hear the president talking about Haitians eating cats and dogs, you should be hearing jokes about watermelon and fried chicken. You know what I'm saying? When you hear him talking about, I mean, Stephen Miller literally after this ruling said Haiti is in no worse condition than Chicago and St. Louis, like doing a backhanded slap at the dignity of Black people, because that's what they mean when they say Chicago and St. Louis in 3 different places, right? This notion that Black people should not be able to live free lives. And with Haiti in particular, as the first free republic, the first country to throw off the shackles of slavery in the Western Hemisphere, it is associated with Blackness to the point that it's like a natural member of the African Union. Do you know what I mean? Like Haitians are seen clearly as Black people without question. And so the attack on Haitians, whether it's they were the first people who were excluded from this country as Black people, period, and they were Black people, the first people detained in mass incarceration schemes in Guantanamo Bay and detention camps, because they're Black people. They form the basis of the crimmigration system that we see now, right? And so the Blackness of Haitians has always been the root of the issue, in the same way as the Blackness of Somali and the Blackness of Nigeria, the Blackness of other folks that this administration has attacked. But with Haiti, it's an extra crispy Blackness because it represents Black liberation. And that is what they are so upset about.
Lots of reasons to be upset with this ruling. Todd, I want to go to you. You're a civil rights attorney. When you read Justice Alito's majority opinion, particularly the section saying that courts can no longer review TPS terminations, what are the legal implications beyond Haiti and Syria? And I think this is extremely important. It's an extremely important point to make because we're talking about 1.3 million people from 17 countries.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, of all the different rulings the Supreme Court has rendered over the last few years, this to me is the one that's intended to stoke the most terror and is the most blatantly racist of anything we've engaged, even more so than redistricting cases, because of the very reasons that were just stated. It's really going to go to the heart of dismantling and destabilizing the whole notion of Black liberation, of freedom of brown people, the fact that people come to this country for safety, for opportunity, for freedom, or something close to it. And to deny that, people living in fear, living in terror, and being uncomfortable, being in the very communities they've called home for generations, is part and parcel to the administration's efforts to destabilize communities, stress and break down liberation efforts and freedom efforts and organizing efforts, and most importantly, to really get at the heart of any sort of movement or anything historic or present to really fight against the overwhelming racist push to xenophobia, anti-Black sentiment, and all the other things that are kind of just this administration seems to be adopting as part of its talking points. So I think it's unfortunate for the highest court in the land to not only ignore generations of precedent, but also to do something so outwardly focused on race and ethnicity and the kind of the racist sentiments that are embedded in it. But at this point, we can't be surprised. And that's why it's important for you to be right there on the doorstep of the White House. And that's why programs like this and efforts like this to get the word out so people can know exactly how bad it's getting. It's well past canary in a coal mine time. It's time to organize, mobilize, get everyone to vote and then some, and see what we can do to make sure that the people's voice is represented in every bit of legislation, even the courts.
Todd, just as a follow-up, Justice Kagan's dissent, it was searing. She wrote that the majority couldn't even bring themselves to print what the president said about Haitians. From a constitutional standpoint, is there any legal pathway forward, or has the court officially built a wall around executive power on immigration?
Well, I think what they're doing is trying to cover up the blatant nature of the racist comments, because it's impossible for them to really defend their position on legal grounds or even just basically on morality grounds. So what they're doing is trying to hide behind arguments that don't hold weight, just to make sure what's on paper in the course of history will look better. But at the end of the day, people will look back at this decision and know exactly what it stands for, exactly what it's intended to do. and making sure that the court not only further loses credibility, but further establishes itself as one of the most racist institutions that we have in this country.
Nana, I want to go to you for a moment. The rundown, the rundown that your organization, the public-facing materials that your organization has put out are unambiguous, and they have been even while this case was being considered by this court. Baji has called the termination of Haitian TPS, quotes, an act of policy violence. Speak to that framing. Why is violence the right word?
I'm sure that we've all heard the term that politics is war without violence. And this is an example of how, not always true. What is violence? Even the great Coretta Scott King talked about how violence can happen in a lot of different ways, that poverty can be violence, hunger can be violence, lack of healthcare can be violence. When you attack the human dignity, beyond the human rights, the human dignity of people, that is violence. That is an attack. That is violence. You think about, and it may seem trivial, but we can kind of get it, fellow Ghanaians here.
That's right.
You think about in this World Cup, how excited Haitians have been, how excited we've been for Haiti. They, just 24 hours ago, scored their first goal in the World Cup, and just the vibe and the excitement, the joy, the break that people get from thinking about what is happening, the interference that's happened in their country, of all the turmoil, right? To be able to feel that pride and that happiness in such a universal way. And then 24 hours later, this decision that says you are nothing. You are disposable. You are throwaway. Man, that's violence. That is violence. And we need to look at it as violence and understand it as violence. And they understand it as violence because they know that violence comes with the sword, but it also comes with the pen. And this is violence by way of the pen, which we know often, Doctor, leads to violence by way of the sword. We know that.
Yeah. And what we also know, I know this for sure because just over my shoulder, Stephen Miller walked out and did a gaggle with members of the press here on the White House grounds this afternoon. And he said a number of things, but the one thing he said that just really stopped me cold, his message essentially to Haitians losing TPS is that Haiti ain't any worse than Chicago, LA, or St. Louis. Todd, you're beaming in from Chicago at the moment in about 30 seconds. What's your immediate reaction to that?
Well, I think Queen from Baji said it perfectly. I think what they're trying to do is completely dehumanize and can extrapolate all the pain and struggling of the Black experience and just try to pile it together and act like there's no responsibility outside from within inside the White House. At the end of the day, Haiti is a beautiful country. Haiti is a place where liberation is born and where we look to. But Chicago is also a place for organizing and dissent, as well as St. Louis. But it is known as epicenters with Black leadership, Black organizers, Black thinkers, fighters for generations. So what they're trying to do is just not only minimize the history of these respective places, but also just cast us away as things that are afterthoughts, as things that aren't worthy of attention, as things that are all, to be thrown away, as was already mentioned. So I think all this is an effort to further the effort to dehumanize and lead, as was already said, from the pen to the sword. And if you just say, you start to believe that, the struggles that people are enduring in Haiti is their struggles, our struggle, there's no question. But there's no effort from the White House to do anything to address any of those things. And I think that's the biggest issue of what's going on here. Not only do they know that struggle takes place, but they're not only celebrating it, but then now have the nerve to ignore their basic duty and then to make jokes about it as if they're not in a position to address it and it's not within their actual oath of office to make sure they're doing something meaningful to do something about it.
When we come forward, we are live from the White House, more with Todd Belcore and Nii Gymfi. When we come forward, we're also going to get into what Congress can do right now and what Haitian TPS holders need to know to protect themselves. We want to remind you what you can do because we are not without power. These things just aren't automatically inevitable. We are live from the White House. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We are live from the White House today on this consequential day. A lot of us have been bracing ourselves for the remaining decisions coming down from the U.S. Supreme Court, and we've been following the case related to Haitians with temporary protective status. That's a legal status. The court essentially said that the administration can do what they want with the folks that have this temporary protective status. I'm joined with Nii Gymfi. She is the executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. Also, Todd Belcore, who's the executive director of Social Change Chicago, also a civil rights attorney. During the break, as I have a tendency to do, I'm checking messages and looking through notes. And I saw this post about Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Nana, I want to get your reaction to this. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett has two Black children, Vivian and John Peter, whom she and her husband Jesse adopted from Haiti. Today, she ruled with the conservative supermajority to allow President Trump to end protective status for Haitians living in the U.S. legally, despite the country remaining destabilized. What do you make of this?
I'm gonna try not to get too deep, but I will say that I remember when Justice Amy Coney was talking about her children, and she mentioned that her daughter was stronger than all of the boys combined. And I thought to myself, I didn't understand what's happening in that house. So I'll leave that there. And then I'll proceed to talk about how, because we know, both on the continent and the Caribbean, what happens often and the ways that we are treated when we are adopted in these ways, because people think that they are saving us from the wretchedness of the earth, which is our own relatives and our own communities. And so for me, it's not surprising in any shape, way, or form. Like, I am sure that her view of Haiti is one that probably doesn't differ too much from the president's view of Haiti. And she feels that she saved her children from that fate. It's unfortunate. I know there are a lot of Haitians that thought the opposite, that really believe that because she has children, adopted children that are Haitian, that would give her some understanding of their humanity and some understanding of their dignity. And they're very disappointed, but I'm not disappointed. I was very clear that was not going to be, let's say, a positive factor in the decision making on this case.
Todd, Senator Ron Wyden is sounding the alarm today about what he says is a federal health agency plan to deport more than 500 migrant children. There's a time where it's like, well, let's spare the kids. Not right now. What is happening, and how does this connect to the larger machinery of what this administration is building?
I think this is just the most recent example of the level of depravity that this administration is willing to engage in. I mean, you can't say that out loud without feeling a little bit of shame for your country when we're in a country where our highest level of government is not only co-signing, but actively taking steps to throw children out of this country. And then there's nothing more immoral than that. There's nothing more inhumane than that. And the justification is completely impossible to put a finger on. They blame it on people having, heinous crimes, and that's just not the case in terms of the actual arrest records and who they're actually deporting and who they're isolating, who they're putting in concentration camps. They say it's because, well, they have no connections to family. There's no parents or uncles or cousins here. And that hasn't been true in any example for any person that they've apprehended or pulled aside or identified as someone that needs to be deported. So I think at the end of the day, Doctor, when you think about all these actions, this is just a continued effort to destabilize the country, weaken our democracy, and weaken our communities. So we're scared when it comes time to vote. But this is actually the same sort of impetus, the same sort of righteous rage we need to tap into to make sure not only do we vote, but we vote in greater numbers than ever before, to make sure people know that there is accountability at the end of this rainbow. And it's going to end in this administration losing its power to continue to take away our freedom, opportunities, and our access to justice.
And speaking of voting, I want to bring in something that kind of gets lost in this conversation, the political dimension of this. We know that Democrats just had a significant progressive sweep in the New York primaries. There's a real rift inside the party about the future. Nana, do Democrats have the spine and energy to fight back on immigration in a way that actually protects communities? Or, are they just still overwhelmed by trying to come up with a message?
So let's be clear that mainstream Democrats, right? The Democrats that are, let's say, centrist, center left, they've actually been terrible on immigration.
Yeah.
The beating of Haitians and other Black immigrants at Del Rio happened under President Joseph Biden. That did not happen under Donald Trump, right? We've had felons, not families, as if felons didn't have families. That happened under our dear President Barack Obama. And the list can go on and on. I mean, President Biden went on one knee in Little Haiti and said, I'm going to take care of you. You're going to be fine. And in fact, that is not what happened. There has been, some of the people who are Democrats were supporting the Lincoln Riley bill, which is criminalizing immigrants and even more criminalized than they are right now. So I think that when we look at that rift, that some of that rift actually is about immigration, actually about folks talking about abolish ICE and shut down these detention camps, that we should have a different approach instead of deporting people, that we should have immigration be an administrative process, not a process that involves enforcement, that we should look at migration as a human right. And so I think, as long as the centrists are in control in terms of immigration, we're still in trouble. But as we see this growing shift, I think that we'll find ourselves in a better place if that shift continues.
You both mentioned this, and I want to give you a chance to close on this in our remaining moments. I want to close with something concrete, because I know our leaders, learners, and listeners, including Haitian TPS holders, family members, advocates, attorneys, everyone has been sort of thrown into a tailspin on this. What do people do right now, today, to protect themselves and their families? Todd, and then Nana.
Well, I think at the end of the day, this is when community and leaning on your community and your tribe is more important than ever. You need to make sure people are watching your back. You need to make sure people are videotaping interactions with law enforcement of any kind. You need to make sure that you have emergency contacts and exit strategies and contingencies, because people are being taken in the middle of the night without an opportunity to communicate. And if you don't have a feedback loop to make sure people are checking in and being in a position to make sure people are aware of it, it's hard to even respond quickly enough for an attorney to step in, or for anyone to step in to kind of stop things before they go too far. So I think the first thing people need to do is make sure they have a plan and a strategy to make sure they're communicating with one another, to report back, check back, make sure they're safe, and make sure they're well, which also has a tremendous strain on people's psyche, as Executive Director Gymfi already mentioned, but it's necessary. But then also make sure you have some lawyers, some bail money, all these things that should be, that you associate with folks who are running from the law like criminals. But these are just our community. These are our residents. These are people who are being targeted and treated like that without having any sort of cause for being treated like that outside of their color. Let's be clear, this does not happen to Ukrainians, this does not happen to Russians, this does not happen to anyone of the lighter hue. So make sure you have those things in place, but also to the extent that you're able to vote, but also people that you know are able to vote, let them feel the fear that you're feeling. Let them feel the pain and struggle and the hardship that you're enduring every day. It's the concern of leaving your house and wondering if you can come back to your family. And make sure they use that and remember that to organize, mobilize, and get more people to vote than ever before. Because this is not an election that you can win by 10, 20, 40 votes. This has to be an overwhelming election to overcome all the different efforts that are going to take place to frustrate voters, disenfranchised voters, to mess up the count, to throw away ballots, all the different things we know are going to be done. And we need to make sure that the vote tally is so overwhelming that there's no way it could ever be misinterpreted or talk as a stolen election or invite insurrection part two. So a lot of things I know at the table right now, unfortunately, Doctor, but this is the medicine that we need, and this is the only path forward.
Nana, what would you add?
I would add that people need to make sure that they know their rights so that they can protect themselves from themselves. People can go to Baji Action Fund, BAJI actionfund.org. Go to our We Got Us section. You will find those rights in Haitian Creole. You will find the emergency preparedness plans to have ready. But above all, don't panic. have fearless discipline, know that we are not defeated and that we can continue to push, and call your senators. There is a resolution came through with our representative, Ayanna Pressley, passed the House. It's now in the Senate. Call the senators and ask them to vote yes on that 3-year extension of TPS. We can still get this done legislatively if we have enough of a push. If we get enough folks, even of Republicans, the president will feel the pressure to sign that. And then we'll be putting forth efforts to have a permanent solution through Citizenship for All, through a bill called the Haitian Refugee and Immigrant Fairness Act. We're not done fighting, so don't give up.
Todd, Belcore, and Nana Gymfi, I want to thank you both for your work, your witness, your clarity, and your courage. This is not abstract policy. These are human lives. These are Black lives. And we're going to keep fighting until every Black immigrant in this country, every brown immigrant in this country has the permanent protection that they deserve. I want to thank you both for joining us. When we come forward, we shift to Congresswoman Maxine Waters and what she's calling a racist attack by the Trump administration on a housing bill specifically designed to help Black Americans build wealth. And we're going to connect that directly to what we just heard about TPS, because this is all really one fight. We're live from the White House. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.